Hello, I'm Ryan with High Desert Math Tutor, and today I want to talk to you about conversion factors. So to begin, as with most subjects in math or tools in math, we like to name our tools after the, the requirements to use the tool. So a conversion factor has two components. The conversion, which means to change, and factor, which is anything that's being multiplied. So this is a reminder to us that if we want to convert from one unit, such as say pounds, to another unit, such as say ounces, then we'd need to use a conversion factor, which means we have to multiply by something that will change the unit for us. So one thing before we begin, we need to be aware of the idea of versions of one, if you want to actually understand what's going on here. So let's say we take 5 and we divide it by 5. Well, what is 5 divided by 5? That's equal to 1. Now it turns out, as I'm sure you know, any number divided by itself is always equal to 1. But what if we play around with the numbers a little bit? What if instead of 5 on top, we say 2 plus 3, and we divide that by 5? Well, 2 plus 3 is still 5. So this is still 5 divided by 5, which means even though this looks different, it's still equal to 1. So we need to use this idea of using versions of 1 with multiplication to take a quantity, such as 3 pounds, and to convert that to an equivalent quantity. So we have the same amount of stuff, but instead of talking in terms of pounds, we will talk in terms of, say, ounces. But the key here is if we know that 1 pound is the same as 16 ounces, how can we use that to put together a version of 1 that's useful for us? Well, what we can do is this. We can say 16 ounces divided by 1 pound. Well, if these are the same amount of stuff, if 16 ounces is the same as 1 pound, then when you divide 16 ounces by 1 pound, that's still equal to 1. So let's go ahead and jump into a problem now and take a look at how this arises. So we want to convert, for this first problem, convert 3 pounds into just some number of ounces. So we always start by copying our starting amount, which is 3 pounds. So for pounds, I'm going to use LBS. That's the normal symbol abbreviation for pounds. I'm going to say that's the same as, and we need to start with our pounds, but the question is, what can we multiply 3 pounds by without changing it? Well, the only thing you can really multiply anything by without changing it is 1. But now this is where we can start being clever and using different versions of 1. So we'll take our 3 pounds, and what we want to do is we want to get pounds to go away. If we want to get pounds to go away, that means we need to multiply this by something where we can cancel pounds. So if we multiply this by a fraction and we put pounds in the denominator and we turn this into a fraction, we can see that if there are pounds in the numerator, pounds in the denominator, and we have multiplication, those will cancel each other out. But now that we know where to put the pounds in this fraction, the question is, what do we want to convert to? Well, we know a relationship between pounds and ounces, so we'll put pounds in the denominator to cancel these, but we'll put ounces in the numerator so we actually go to the unit we want. But this is where we have to think, how many pounds is the same as how many ounces? Well, 1 pound is the same as 16 ounces. And the nice thing is, now that we have our fractions, those units cancel. And all that's left over is 3 times 16, which is 48, 1 times 1, which is 1, our unit ounces. And finally, we can simplify. 48 divided by 1 is just 48 ounces. So a quick recap. Whenever we want to convert from one unit to another, we have to multiply what we're starting with by a version of 1. We choose our version of 1 so that it can help us cancel the unit we want to get rid of, but it also brings us to the unit we want to go to. Now here, we always fill in the units before we fill in the numbers, because now, after we know that we're talking about pounds and ounces, it's our job to ask how many pounds is the same as how many ounces. As long as the value of the numerator and the denominator are the same, we have a conversion factor, we just multiply and simplify, then we're good to go. Now, in this problem, we only needed to use a conversion factor once, but it's pretty common to need to use conversion factors multiple times. So I'm going to take it a little bit faster for these next two problems, but here we'll see we need to use conversion factors more than once. So we want to convert from 5 feet to centimeters. So begin by copying 5 feet, and we want that to be the same as 5 feet times some number. Well, the only number we can multiply by without changing 5 feet, changing the value, is 1. But we're going to use a version of 1 that is a little bit more useful here. So we'll take 5 feet. I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a fraction by just dividing it by 1. But now my question to you is, if we want feet to cancel right here, where do we put feet in this fraction? Since we have feet on top here, we need to put feet on the bottom in the fraction. So our goal is to go from feet to centimeters, but I don't know a direct conversion between feet and centimeters. But what I do know is that 1 inch is the same as 2.54 centimeters. I also know that 12 inches is the same as 1 foot. So for now, I'm going to actually use this conversion factor right here to help us get a little bit closer to centimeters. So I know how to get from feet to inches, and it turns out in 1 foot there are 12 inches. Now we're getting closer to where we want to be. We can cancel feet with feet, but what's left over now? The unit that's left over is inches, and we don't want to be in inches. So we can use this extra information we know that 1 inch is the same as 2.54 centimeters. We can put together another conversion factor. So we'll put another fraction, but here we want to cancel inches. So since inches is on top here, we need to cancel it by putting inches on the bottom. Then we want to go 2 centimeters, so I'm going to put centimeters in the numerator. And now we need to choose these numbers carefully so that the value in the numerator is the same as the value in the denominator. So I know that 1 inch is the same as 2.54 centimeters. So this is the conversion factor that we need to use in this instance. So these inches cancel with these inches. And now it's time to multiply. So as always with fractions, you multiply straight across. So for the denominator, 1 times 1 times 1 is just 1. For the numerator, we have 5 times 12 times 2.54. So I'll write this out first. 5 times 12 times 2.54. And then we have, I'll put these parentheses to make it a little bit clearer. But then we have centimeters as our unit. So once we finish multiplying this out, we'll be all set. So I can tell you off the top of my head that 5 times 12 is 60. And we have 2.54 still. Centimeters. And the next thing, 60 times 2.54, turns out that ends up being 1, 2, 1, 2, ends up being 152.4. And I'll go ahead and show step by step. And finally, any number divided by 1 stays the same. So we just have 152.4 centimeters. So it turns out if you are 5 feet tall and you go almost anywhere else other than America on Earth, you want to talk about how tall you are, you'll probably say you're 152.4 centimeters. So that's the conversion. 5 feet is the same as 152.4 centimeters. So just to reiterate, this first problem was an easier one where we just needed one step to go from pounds to ounces. In this problem, in order to do this with the knowledge I have, I didn't know a relationship directly between feet and centimeters. So what I was able to do was convert kind of twice here. At first, I converted from feet to inches, then I converted from inches to centimeters. So it's pretty common to use conversion factors more than once in a single problem. So for our last example, we'll look at converting 3 weeks to minutes. And in this one, I'm not going to give as much explanation. I'm mostly going to just talk through what I'm doing and just show you the process and let you kind of think about the details on your own. So as always, we start with our initial value, which is 3 weeks. Then we want to show that to convert, we're going to have to multiply by some version of 1. Now, just a quick note, you don't have to show this step when you're doing this in practice, but I'm showing it to you because I want you to understand the logic of how we're changing 5 feet, for example, into centimeters without changing the value that we have. Because 5 feet is the same as 152.4 centimeters, and I want you to see it's only the same if we're multiplying by a version of 1. If this was a number that wasn't equal to 1, then we would actually be changing this value where it doesn't have the same overall length as this. So going back to this, we want to choose a version of 1 that helps get us from weeks to minutes. So to do this, we multiply by our conversion factor, which is always a fraction. I'll turn this into a fraction so we can see clearly where 3 weeks goes. And we see that we have weeks in the numerator. That means we need to put weeks in the denominator here so that those cancel each other. Now for me, I don't know how many minutes is a week, how many minutes are in a week. I don't know how many hours are in a week, but I do know how many days are in a week. So I'm going to put days right here. I know in 1 week we have 7 days. Now this is good so far because we can cancel weeks, but now we're talking in terms of days. So let's get away from days and get a little bit closer to minutes. So once again, I don't know how many minutes are in 1 day, but I do know that in 1 day there are 24 hours. So 1 day is the same as 24 hours. It's a little bit closer. We can cancel days and days, but we're still not to minutes. So one last time, we need to use another conversion factor, where here we're going to go away from hours, but finally I know how many minutes are in an hour. So 1 hour is the same as 60 minutes. And we can see hours cancels with hours, and we have finally converted from weeks. We've canceled everything out, and the only thing that's left over is minutes. So we just need to simplify. So as always with fractions, we just multiply straight across on the numerator, straight across on the denominator. So for the denominator first, 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. For the numerator, we have 3 times 7 times 24 times 60, and our unit is in minutes. Well, here, if everything's divided by 1, then anything divided by 1 stays the same. So we just have 3 times 7 times 24 times 60. And our unit is still minutes. So 3 times 7 is 21. You can do 21 times 24. We get 4, 2, 8, 4. And now we can multiply everything by 60. So we get the 504 times 60. 4, 2, 2, 30, the 0, the 0. So it turns out that 3 times 7 times 24 times 60 is the same as 30,240. So our goal was to convert 3 weeks into some number of minutes. And it turns out, as we see, 3 weeks is actually the same as 30,240 minutes. So this is the process for working with conversion factors. The benefit to practicing conversions using conversion factors like this is that you can convert weights, lengths, time. You can convert money from like US dollars to euros or to yen or to any other unit that you know some sort of relation between. You do have to know 2 different units, at least some connection between the 2 of them to put together a conversion factor. But this process is very important if you ever want to go into chemistry or if you ever want to go into physics, especially chemistry, physics, or just economics. You know, you'll use conversion factors quite a bit in all these scenarios. So that's it.